How do you keep the interest of secondary English pupils who are more interested in the paparazzi than the literati? Well, we might just have three solutions for you. A CD-ROM featuring the latest Hollywood blockbuster.
What we're going to do, you're going to watch the trailer for The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. You're going to write nothing. I just want you to take in the images.
Support materials for teaching reading.
What kind of adventure do you think Michael, who is the main character in Kensuke's Kingdom, what kind of adventure do you think he's going to have?
And finally, an IT tool that makes mincemeat of complex text. What will our panel of secondary English experts think? Well, find out here on Resource Review. Joining me to recommend today's resources is Shona Walton. Shona is General Inspector of English and Drama for Warwickshire LEA. On the panel, we have Simon Gibbons, Programme Leader for Secondary PGCE at De Montfort University, and we also have Adrian Blight, Director of Imagine Education. Welcome to you all. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you.
Shona, without further ado, let's kick off with your first choice of resource. It's an interactive CD-ROM based around the recent film about the Chronicles of Narnia. Now, can you explain this resource to us and why you like it?
Yes, well, the best thing about this resource is that it's free. It's one of a series of CDs that come from the Film Education Unit, which is an outfit based in London, and it's got extracts from the text, it's got interviews with people, it's got a range of other resources that stimulate creativity, and above all, it sends children, young learners, into the media text.
Great. Well, before we discuss this resource any further, let's have a look at it in use. We took a peek into the wardrobe, into the magical world of College High School, where teacher Damon Richardson was using the resource with his Year 9 class.
Right, what we're going to do, you're going to watch the trailer for The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. You're going to write nothing. I just want you to take in the images. I used the resource to springboard a discussion on genre. From that, they then began to identify the key elements that were scripted on the CD-ROM.
There's no such thing as a soundbite.
Absolutely. First man. Right, OK, we're going to watch that. The long-term plan for this piece is for the students to then write their own piece of fantasy writing within this genre, adapting some of the rules, codes and conventions that they see modelled through the trailer today. OK, what's special about The Lion?
It's going to get them engrossed in the film, so if I say a talking line, they're going to be like, wow.
So from that they would then lift what the typical characters are, what the settings would be and how those settings changed, and what different subgenres the Narnia trailer would dovetail into. What's good about the CD is that it was quite handy just to be able to deliver a whole package and roll it out to a class. It's very colourful, it's very easy to navigate, which is great for the kids. It isn't terribly confusing in any way. Okay, characters that are everyday. From a teacher's perspective, however, it would really benefit if we could enlarge, for example, clips of movies, if we could enlarge font. And despite trying again, I couldn't activate the sound on the CD-ROM at all. I struggled sometimes to see where the links with the National Curriculum Framework were. A lot of the tasks that I looked through seemed quite purposeless and rather ambiguously worded. I would certainly use it again, most definitely with Year 7, perhaps as an introductory topic. Ultimately, yeah, in terms of it is for free, it's good value for money, it isn't something I don't think I would particularly seek out otherwise.
Well, Shona, technical problems aside, what the teacher really liked about this resource was that it was free. He didn't seem to really like that much else about it.
Well, it is free, but it's also one of a series. You can have as many as they produce for nothing. It's not going to be the mainstay of your curriculum, but to develop visual vocabulary and to relate a scene in a text, print text, to the same scene in a visual text, then It does that very readily, very easily, very easy to navigate.
And the pupils are not going to become kind of fixated by bits of the film that they might have seen?
I think that's the teacher's skill. It's always a danger, but it is the teacher's skill in taking it back through to the print text and making the comparisons.
OK. Well, Simon, what do you think about this particular CD-ROM?
Well, I mean, I agree. I think it's a good resource. I actually think it's better if it's used in smaller groups with kids. I mean, the teacher there was using it with the whole class, and actually he was making that point about the images being quite small on the screen. I think that's because it's really designed to be used by kids on a single-use computer. I mean, and the activities they do on it, where they do particular activities about setting or genre or whatever, and then they pick out bits of images or bits of the story they want to choose, and then they build up a storybook or storybox, it says in the CD, and they use that to produce their own story at the end. So it seems to me to be a really good resource.
Adrian, what do you think?
I think it's a very professionally produced resource. Film education do produce excellent resources generally. A lot of interactivity, live visual media, as well as drag and drop techniques for the students to get involved with. As Shona said, there's gaming elements in this CD as well, which is engaging for students.
I mean, it's bringing ICT into secondary English.
Absolutely, which is a very good thing if it's done properly. I think that nothing comes for free, and the cost on here is some assumptions that the teacher could make. Firstly, that it will engage students because it's about a modern film, and that isn't necessarily true.
Does it lose its appeal after the hype of the film being out has kind of dissipated?
I think that is part of the danger, and that's why I like this as a resource, the film education resource, because they're always, on general release, out comes the CD. And so, yeah, you catch it while the wave's there.
OK, well, thank you all very much. Now let's move on to Shona's second choice of resource, which is more almost a methodology than a resource. It's the guided reading packs. Shona, explain this resource to us.
Yes, I have to say my choice of materials today was to push the envelope in terms of pedagogy, not just to say, wow, this is a real turn-on. Nate produced some excellent materials, and this guided reading pack builds on the national curriculum invention, really, of guided reading. It's key to understand that there is an introduction which you have to buy separately, and that introduction explores the pedagogy and the methodology of guided reading, which is a small group activity, 4, 5, 6 students, within the larger context of a class.
Well, thank you very much. We went back to College High School to see how teacher Sharon Green got on applying guided reading to Kensky's Kingdom with her Year 8 class.
The resource that I was using today was the Nate Guided Reading Pack, and I was also using hard copies of Kensky's Kingdom. Our objectives today then are to identify the effects of change upon Michael, who is the main character in Kensky's Kingdom. Today we started off by introducing the text. We read the opening 2 paragraphs and we thought about why the author had written them in that way. What I want us to do then, we're going to carry on reading, and then I'm going to set you a task, and I'm going to work with some people individually. We're going to do a little bit of guided reading. The group around the outside was set a number of tasks, and whilst they were doing that, the guided reading group in the centre were working intensely, looking at the changes for Michael and his family and finding quotations that showed that. Is that for the children or the parents?
The parents.
Splendid. Can I hear one of them then?
It was before the redundantly.
I do think that it was a good resource. I think it was quite easy to follow. There were certain parts of it that got a little bit complicated, but I'm sure that as you're working through the pack, it becomes easy to follow. And I think what I liked about it was that a lot of it was quite generic as well. They were looking at quite open things like character and mood, looking at changes in character throughout. So I think that's something that you can apply to any novel, really. The only thing that I would probably change about it, and I don't think that it's a major flaw, but I think perhaps it could have been a little bit clearer about some of the lesson plans. That for me, they weren't quite the way that I'm used to planning myself. And I think that towards the end of the lesson, when you pull it all together, it's really, really important to make sure that everyone kind of like feels involved. I want everyone to have something while I check on what everyone else is doing, okay? I think they quite enjoyed it. I think the group in the middle certainly enjoyed it. I do think they represent good value for money, particularly because the lesson plans are quite specific, so I think that if you're looking for something to teach for a specific text, that amount of money for the Kensky's Kingdom pack isn't particularly much for what you're actually getting. And as for the guided reading pack, I think it's full of so many good hints and tips. I think it's a good, worthwhile investment.
Well, Shona, a good response from our teacher there, but Sharon did say at first she found it quite hard to get into.
Yes, it's quite dense, and you do need to have a lot of sympathy with the methodology before you approach the materials themselves, because they're very detailed.
Now let's open up and see what the panel think. Adrian, do you think there's a danger that teachers become too reliant on a resource like this?
I think it's a really important consideration for a teacher to have, is that the ultimate guide for a student is the teacher. So this can support them on a journey that they're already been guided in. It doesn't replace the teacher and has to be used sparingly and appropriately. And I think, as Shona said, there's enough depth in that resource to be able to do that effectively.
Simon, what do you think of this guided reading style of teaching?
Well, I'm in a number of minds, really. The pack in itself kind of goes halfway towards getting teachers to do it, but doesn't give them enough, I don't think. I think there should be more there. I think it's really just taking a popular book and giving you a few lesson plans, and there's a sort of, it's kind of dipping the toe in guided reading, but it's not really doing it in the way that I understand guided reading really should work.
Well, I can't agree with him, because for me, what it does, it's a scaffold for teachers to enable them to have a go at something.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think the pack really explains what the methodology is all about. I mean, it kind of takes a few isolated quotes from a couple of people like Traves and whatever. I mean, that's not where the guided reading philosophies come from, as far as I understand it. It's a lot more structured than that in terms of the kind of theory that underpins it. And I think the book should have been more upfront about it. And for me, I think teachers should be engaging with the theory behind guided reading more explicitly and just being told a few things by, you know, Peter Traves and...
well, they can get that from the national strategies. There's a lot.
Well, they don't. It's not. The theory isn't in the national strategy. There's a whole lot of structures in that. That's my problem with it.
Well, an interesting resource there. I'm sorry, Adrian, I have to cut you off, because we are going to move on to an ICT resource, your third choice resource, something a bit different. It's called Cruncher. Tell us about this one, Shona.
Cruncher is part of the teachit.co.uk package. But Cruncher is a new element which collapses texts, which enable the teacher and the explorer, as they call the learner in this case, to explore it in all sorts of different ways, to manipulate it. If you were to take, let's say, the whole of Richard II and collapse the text, you get a whole bunch of verbs. You say, right, take me out the verbs. When you get those words all together, you begin to speculate about what is this text about? What might the characters, the events, the themes, the concerns of the characters in this play be from looking at one word class?
Shona, can I just clarify one point about Cruncher? It's free if you're a member of Teachit, is that right? But that's about £500 membership.
Yeah, that is the disadvantage. No, it would be expensive for just Cruncher.
You certainly would, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, I like it as an ideas workshop and a forum, but I struggle with the fact that so much of it is kind of just off-the-shelf stuff and prevents teachers thinking for themselves, I think.
Adrian, do you share that concern about Teachit? I mean, we're talking about Cruncher, really, but to get to Cruncher, you've got to get past all these tasty lesson plans.
That's right, and I think the core of being a teacher is to share knowledge with people, and to have to charge for that sharing of knowledge doesn't sit very comfortably with me. I think teachers should collaborate and share resources online freely.
So really what we need is Cruncher as a standalone resource somewhere.
Put it to them.
OK. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today, but to recap, the three resources that we looked at were the Chronicles of Narnia interactive CD-ROM from Film Education, the Guided Reading Pack from Nate, and finally the Cruncher, included in membership to Teachit.works from Teachit UK Limited. For more information about all of the resources that we've discussed today, go to our website. It's teachers.tv/resource review. Or if you want to, email us. We're at resourcereview@teachers.tv. So all that remains for me to do is to say a very big thank you to our panel, to Shona, to Simon and to Adrian. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Resource Review. Bye-bye.